Look at the birds and the bees in the garden. Click on a bee and a bird to see what they are doing. The bee is visiting all these flowers to collect nectar from them. The hummingbird is reaching the nectar found inside the flower with its long beak. In this unit, you are going to learn Look at the pictures. Can you see the pollen grains? Pollen grains are found in the anther of a male flower. But now you can see pollen grains elsewhere too. When birds and bees fly from flower to flower, they transfer pollen grains from one flower to another. The pollen grains released from the anther is transferred to the stigma. This process is called pollination. Pollination usually happens with the help of pollinating agents such as insects and wind. When an insect, such as a bee, settles on a flower to collect nectar, pollen grains stick to its legs. Then, the insect carries these pollen grains to the stigma. Flowers that depend on insects for pollination have certain characteristics. This is a lily. Mouse over the parts of the flower to find out about its characteristics. The filament is short. There are nectaries at the base of the petals. The petals are large and brightly colored to attract insects. The petals are large and brightly colored to attract insects. The filament is short. There are nectaries. The petals are large and brightly colored to attract the filament. The filament is short. The anthers are small and located below. The anthers are small and located below the stigma. The stigma is sticky. Small amounts of large-sized pollen grains are produced. Some flowers depend on the wind for pollination. Pollen grains are blown from the anther to the stigma. Look at the grass flowers. Mouse over the parts of the flower to know more about its characteristics. The anthers are large and produce a lot of pollen grains. The stigma is large and feathery. The petals are small and pale in color. Both the stigmas and the anthers hang outside the flower. Grass flowers do not have any nectaries. Big amounts of small-sized and light pollen grains are produced. The small and light pollen grains are easily carried by the wind. The anthers are large. Click on flower A to see what happens to the pollen grains. The pollen grains are transferred from the anther of flower A to the stigma of flower A. This type of pollination is called self-pollination. Now, click on flower B. The pollen grains are transferred from the anther of flower A to the stigma of flower B on the same plant. This type of pollination is also called self-pollination. Self-pollination occurs when pollen grains are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or to the stigma of a different flower on the same plant. Another type of pollination is called cross-pollination. Click on flower A. The pollen grains are transferred from the anther of flower A to the stigma of flower B on another plant. Cross-pollination occurs when the pollen grains of a flower are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower found on another plant. Here are several flowers. Click on a flower to see its parts clearly. What is the agent of pollination for each of Grass and maize are wind-pollinated flowers because they have small pale-colored petals, stigmas and anthers that hang outside on long styles, and a large amount of small and light pollen grains. Grass and maize are wind-pollinated flowers because they have small pale-colored petals, stigmas and anthers that hang outside on long styles, and a large amount of small and light pollen grains. Lily and hibiscus are insect-pollinated flowers because they have brightly colored petals, sticky stigmas, and small anthers. Grass and maize are wind-pollinated flowers because they have small pale-colored petals. Lily and hibiscus are insect-pollinated flowers because they have brightly colored petals, sticky stigmas, and small anthers. Click True or Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. Insect-pollinated flowers have large, brightly colored petals, sticky stigmas, and small anthers. These flowers produce nectar and small amounts of large pollen grains. Wind-pollinated flowers have dull and small petals. The stigmas and anthers protrude outside the flower. They do not produce nectar. They produce large amounts of small and light pollen grains. There are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination occurs when pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower on the same plant. Cross-pollination occurs when the pollen grains are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower on another plant. There is a bee on the anther of a flower. Drag the bee and drop it on a stigma for cross-pollination to occur. Yes, when the pollen grains from the anther of a flower are brought to the stigma of another flower on a different tree, cross-pollination occurs. You already know what self-pollination and cross-pollination are. Here are some of the similarities between self-pollination and cross-pollination. Both self-pollination and cross-pollination involve the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Both self-pollination and cross-pollination occur among plants of the same species only. They do not occur among plants of different species. Here are the differences between self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination cannot occur when the male and female flowers are found on different plants, whereas cross-pollination can. Self-pollination does not necessarily have to involve a pollinating agent. For flowers where the anther is higher than the stigma, self-pollination can occur without a pollinating agent. However, cross-pollination cannot occur without a pollinating agent. Self-pollination involves one plant only, whereas cross-pollination involves two plants. Can you think of any more differences? There are many advantages of cross-pollination. One of the advantages is that we can produce different varieties of the same species. For example, you now see many beautiful varieties of orchids in Malaysia. Orchids have flowers of different shapes and colors. The many varieties of orchids are results of cross-pollination. Cross-pollination also produces plants of better quality. For example, the Subang 6 papaya, crossed with the Sunrise Solo papaya from Hawaii, produced the Exotica papaya, which has thicker and sweeter flesh. Some cross-pollinated plants are more resistant to diseases, bear better fruits, and mature faster. Which of these pollinating agents can pollinate the sunflower? Are these statements true or false? Involve the transfer of pollen grains from occur among plants of the same species only. They do not occur to the stigma. Both self-pollination and cross-pollination occur among plants of the same species only. They do not occur among plants of different species. The following are the differences between self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination cannot occur when the male and female flowers are found on different plants, but cross-pollination can. Self-pollination involves one plant only, whereas cross-pollination involves two plants. Self-pollination doesn't have to involve pollinating agents. However, cross-pollination must involve pollinating agents. Cross-pollination can produce different varieties of the same species. Cross-pollination can produce plants of better quality. For example, the fruits can be sweeter and have thicker flesh. The plants are more resistant to diseases, bear better fruits, and mature faster. Here are several items. What do you think is the common and main ingredient in these items? Click on these items to find out what their common and main ingredient is. Palm oil is extracted from the fruit of oil palms. Palm oil is used in many consumer products. Therefore, we need oil palms that yield better and more fruits. From the previous lesson, We have learned that cross-pollination can be used to increase the quality of a plant. By crossing two species of oil palm, Piscifera and Dura, a new hybrid, Tenera, is produced. Tenera has thinner shell, more flesh, and produces more oil. This is one example of the use of cross-pollination in agriculture. Can you think of other examples? Cross-pollination has produced many new varieties of plants in agriculture. Papaya of the type Subang 6 is cross-pollinated with sunrise solo from Hawaii to produce exotica. The fruits of exotica are sweeter and thicker. Sweet corn from Taiwan is cross-pollinated with that from Mexico to produce Masmadu corn. The fruits are sweeter, bigger, and more resistant against disease and drought. Malinja, a new strain of paddy, is a cross between Siam 29 and Paddy Fun. This type of paddy produces more fruits which mature faster and are more resistant against diseases. Let's watch an interview with an agriculturist. Based on the interview, write a newspaper article about cross-pollination in agriculture.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about cross-pollination in the field of agriculture. Is the cross-pollination method widely used in agriculture?
Yes, it is widely used in agriculture to produce better breeds of crop.
How is this method carried out in the field?
If the plant is to be cross-pollinated, the stamens will have to be removed to prevent the possibility of selfing. The removal of the stamen is called emasculation. It should be performed before the anthers split open to release pollen. This may require opening the flower by hand before it is ready to bloom. Emasculation can be accomplished by number 1, pinching off the stamens or anthers with tweezers, and number 2, snipping off the stamens or anthers with tweezers, or removing the petals to which the stamens are sometimes attached. A magnifying glass will be particularly useful in emasculation. Pollen is applied with a brush to the center of the blossoms using a brush.
What steps are taken to ensure that unwanted pollen grains will not be transferred to these flowers?
As I mentioned before, during cross-pollination by the workers, the worker must make sure no pollen was picked up during the pollination of the variety that you are pollinating by wiping off the brush before returning the brush in the pollen container. Other than that, the flowers must be covered with plastic bags to ensure the flowers are not pollinated by wind or insects such as bees. Emasculation is done to prevent self-pollination.
Why is cross-pollination widely used in agriculture?
Cross-pollination is used to produce new breeds of crop. These new breeds are normally more resistant to diseases and in some cases produce better, sweeter fruit too. An example of this would be the exotica papaya.
Do all offspring resulting from cross-pollination process inherit only the desirable characteristics from the parent plant?
No. The undesirable genes from the plant is still carried out over to the child plant.
Click true or false. Cross-pollination has been used in agriculture to produce better quality crops that can mature faster. The crops are healthier and more resistant against diseases. The crops are able to produce high quality and new variety of plants. Click on the correct answer. Click on one of the questions to see the answer. What is pollination? Pollination is the process of transferring pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. How do the characteristics of the flowers determine the types of pollinating agents? Insect-pollinated flowers have large, brightly colored petals, sticky stigmas, and small anthers. These flowers produce nectar and small amounts of large pollen grains. They produce large amounts of small and light pollen grains, and anthers hang outside the flower on long styles. They do not produce nectar. They produce large amounts of small and light pollen grains. What types of pollination are there? There are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination occurs when pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower on the same plant. Cross-pollination occurs when the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of another flower on another plant. What are the similarities and differences between self-pollination and cross-pollination? Self-pollination and cross-pollination are similar because both involve the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Also, both self-pollination and cross-pollination occur among plants of the same species only. They do not occur among plants of different species. Self-pollination and cross-pollination are different because self-pollination cannot occur when the male and female flowers are found on different plants, whereas cross-pollination can. Self-pollination involves only one plant, whereas cross-pollination involves two plants. Self-pollination does not need a pollinating agent, whereas cross-pollination needs a pollinating agent. What are the advantages of cross-pollination? Cross-pollination can produce different varieties of plants. It can produce plants of better quality. For example, the fruits can be sweeter and have thicker flesh, and the plants are more resistant to diseases, can bear more fruits, and can mature faster. What are the uses of cross-pollination in agriculture? Cross-pollination is used in agriculture to produce crops with better qualities. For example, a cross between two species of oil palm, Piscifera and Dura, produced Tenera. Tenera has thinner shell, more flesh, and produces more oil. Pollen grains provide interesting information about. Click on one of the questions to see the answer. What are the advantages of cross-pollination? Cross-pollination can What are the uses of cross-pollination in agriculture? Cross-pollination is used in agriculture to produce crops with better qualities. For example, a cross between two species of oil palm, Piscifera and Dura, produced Tenera. Tenera has thinner shell, more flesh, and produces more oil. Pollen grains provide interesting information about the different species of plants. Botanists use the patterns on the outside of the pollen grains to recognize and distinguish them. In a group, discuss with your friends on how to collect different types of pollen grains. Observe these pollen grains under the microscope. Draw the shapes of these pollen grains in your report book and label them. You can compare the drawings you have made. Genetic engineering has been used to increase the nutritional value of crops. For example, soya bean plants have been genetically modified to produce beans which have better nutritional value. Find out more about genetically modified soya bean plants. How are they better than natural soya bean plants? What will happen to natural soya bean plants which are grown in fields close to where the genetically modified plants are growing? What are the effects of cross-pollination of natural soya bean plants and the genetically modified plants? What other plants are also genetically modified? Is genetically modified food, GMF, safe to be consumed? Why?